What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. Today, I am joining you pre-recorded if you are used to coming on to the live stream. Tonight, the Doylestown Democrats are hosting a sponsored event for the Advocates for Inclusive Education, which I will be talking about some of that stuff here tonight. But for those that look to join us in the live chat, we will be back live next Wednesday. Same time, same place, but while you're here, make sure to hit that subscribe button just so you know when we go live. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Brazilian election, more so the storming of the Capitol in Brasilia, and specifically the Bolsonaro supporters that did that, and the American media that specifically Tucker Carlson and Fox News that are propagating lies and basically profiteering off of this and trying to disconnect themselves from the obvious parallels and direct inspiration from January 6th. Then we're going to be talking about Central Bucks School Board again, which is becoming the battleground of school boards really in Pennsylvania, at least in Bucks County, and is being utilized as this weird Republican partisan operation that's trying to act like they're not partisan. And we'll get into that. And specifically a policy called Policy 321 that looks to ban any sort of political, socio-political imagery, iconography, flags, etc. in any sort of school, and we'll go over the complications of that specific statement, and of course the hypocrisy and all the underlying stuff that comes with that. Some reporting on it as well, and some live video. It's a little choppy, but for some video from the actual meeting. Then we will talk briefly about what happened in conclusion for the House Speaker race. Again, as we said, it's not really a race, but the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy now for the Republicans, and how folks like Brian Fitzpatrick cave to everything that McCarthy wants. That should be no surprise, but I suppose to some people it will be. With all of that being said, let us jump right into what is going on in Brazil. So, in Brazil, it was October. It was right before our elections here in November. In October, there was a functional runoff election because nobody had achieved the 50% threshold in the Brazilian election between Bolsonaro and Lula da Silva. This election cycle has a lot of complicating factors. I will bar you the specifics of each of their platforms and whatnot. Basically, Bolsonaro is the Trump-like figure supported by Trump, and the right-wing equivalent, more of an authoritarian. People obviously can argue over that stuff, but in my opinion, authoritarian leader, far-right leader, borderline, the same way that you could say with Trump on that line between fascism, nationalism, all that stuff. That is Bolsonaro. And Bolsonaro has been the president there for quite some time, but it should go without saying that I can't jump forward yet. Just stick with me. Lula da Silva was the former president and now is the president because he won this election against Bolsonaro. And what's complicating, and what I was kind of just getting caught up on here, was that Lula was in prison. He was arrested during the Bolsonaro presidency for corruption and for money laundering, this stuff. And I have I have links and I have some stuff that I want to leave in the description of this video that is more in depth than I can kind of go into in one section of an episode, but I want you to have the actual information about why Lula was wrongfully imprisoned, why the charges were kind of trumped up, and we're talking about Brazil, so it's not the same legal system as America. It's not the same checks and balances. It's not the same governmental structure. Frankly, in some of these South American countries, Central American countries that have been overthrown, couped, threatened of coup, all of this stuff, there's a lot of turmoil over the last 100, 150 years that leads to political destabilization and potential corruption, which does not exclude people like Lula, but I am a believer that Lula was wrongly imprisoned. There's plenty of interviews now. There are, and I'll just show you really quick. So on the Wikipedia shows, in 2017, Lula was convicted on charges of money laundering and corruption in a controversial trial and sentenced to 9.5 years in prison. Arguably, again, this was because Bolsonaro was doing this so that he could not run against him in the upcoming elections. He's an older guy, so potentially could pass away, etc. The federal judge of the case, Sergio Moro, later became Minister of Justice and Public Security in the Bolsonaro government. Here, this is reporting from The Intercept, which is a 17-part series, basically, documenting how the Brazilian government worked to get Lula, arrest him, and all the corruption that actually has taken place in Brazil. So just for those listening, it is theintercept.com/series/secret-brazil-archive. The Secret Brazil Archive is and I'm reading now, a massive trove of previously undisclosed materials provides unprecedented insight into the operations of the anti-corruption task force that transformed Brazilian politics and gained worldwide attention. So just quickly, very quickly, noting that in governments and in countries that are and you can look at it sometimes in American politics, look at Donald Trump and draining the swamp, that phrase. The guise of anti-corruption is an easy one for populist leaders, whether they be left or right wing. Anti-corruption messaging is strong, and it is good if utilized in an actual anti-corruption brigade, crusade, however you want to call it, when it's actually going after real corruption rather than trumping up charges. And frankly, you could, if Donald Trump came and got rid of the swamp, as he so alluded to, that would have been a good thing if that was what he actually was planning on doing or ever would have done. But it wasn't. He put the swamp into further power and empowered these people the same way that Bolsonaro did. So I suggest going and reading further into some of these articles released by The Intercept about this Brazilian political battle that had been going on and how America plays a role as well. But yeah, back to the election. Lula beat Bolsonaro in October with a 50.9 to 49.1 margin. And surprisingly, as I say surprisingly, because the storming of the Capitol, as we will be looking at here in a second, took place after Lula had already been sworn in. So Lula is currently the president of Brazil. He is in office. He has taken office. I don't know if he actually was at the Brazilian Capitol when this happened, but this is in stark comparison to January 6th, where Donald Trump was still president while this transition of power was being undertaken, while the processes of our government were being, concluded, while these processes were happening. the cogs of the machine working in our democracy. But the outcomes are largely the same, other than the fact that you will see the video, and I probably could have just, like, if I had the skills, photoshopped the Brazilian capital with the American capital, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, other than instead of, well, actually, it's not even true. There are people that are there, and I don't know that the video that Tucker, I have a video of Tucker sharing some of it, but there are people with American flags there on their shirts and waving them, as well as the Brazilian flag, of course. But I just, and it kind of alludes to the stuff that we're talking about later in the episode, and it's all kind of connected with this far right nationalism. But the co-opting of American symbols, the co-opting of patriotic symbols for nationalist goals continues to underride and destroy these symbols and what they stand for. The brilliance of like the American Republic, the brilliance of the Constitution, the brilliance of even the Declaration of Independence and the Founding Fathers, eroded by nationalists waving the flag in the name of authoritarianism and waving the flag in, and this, again, same thing for Brazil. It's not, doesn't mean as much to me, obviously, but the people in that country, that flag means something to them. Americans have a specific attachment to our symbols, and I am no different. I certainly I actually have my American flag over there on my left. A symbol given to me and my grandfather when he passed away for serving in the military. I have it in this room because it means something to me. But the utilization of the Brazilian flag, the American flag, national flags for nationalist goals is where we depart from having the same vision for the country. I wouldn't advocate for this violence. I would never advocate for this sort of violence. And it's unfortunate to say that we can't say the same about everybody. So here is here is Tucker Carlson, of course, with, I'm saying president because I'm seeing Joe Biden on the screen. Here's Tucker Carlson coming out to defend the Bolsonaro extremists. And yes, they are extremists. When you take political violence to that level, actually, when you take action through violence, you're an extremist. As long as it's, offensive in any sort of way, it is an extreme position. This is right-wing commentator Tucker Carlson lying to his viewers on air with absolutely no evidence, the same way that he did in 2020 and 2021 about the 2020 presidential election, and I'm sure he probably did about Kari Lake's election and some other ones throughout the country during 2022, lying blatantly about the outcome of the Brazilian election, saying that Lula somehow rigged it, even though he was in prison for years during the Bolsonaro administration. He was not in power. He somehow, this is, we'll come back to that. This is Tucker Carlson lying to his audience and trying to spew propaganda from the far right extremists.
In Brazil. So thanks to what was very clearly a rigged election, a convicted criminal called Lula da Silva is now the president of the most important country in South America.
So again, he just says it's clearly rigged. He says it's clearly rigged. A 1% victory, 8% victory is a clearly rigged election. Even though he's saying Lula, an actual criminal, again, arrested and convicted under false pretenses by Bolsonaro's administration, the same way that if we really, really wanted to, we could call people that had, traffic violations, people that, maybe got a DUI or an underage or something like that. Technically speaking, yeah, they are criminals, but does that mean that they could rig an entire election, a national election, let alone a local election? Does that mean that they could rig a presidential election? I don't know. I don't believe so, but I'm not Tucker Carlson.
Millions of people in Brazil understand exactly what happened. They know that their democracy has been hijacked, possibly forever. But there's not much they can do about that.
He's saying possibly forever, somehow trying to extrapolate that Lula will be president forever, which is actually what Xi Jinping, I believe, said in China, which these people, Tucker Carlson and the far right, always create as the enemy. China is the biggest enemy in the world right now to them. And yet, when Xi Jinping said that, Donald Trump said, president for life. I kind of like the sound of that. Not Joe Biden, not Lula da Silva, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody on the left. It was Donald J. Trump.
That Lula may be a criminal, in fact he is, but he has the full support of both the Biden administration and the Chinese government.
So here's the thing. When you win an election, or I should say, Mr. Carlson, I'll straighten my bow tie for you real quick. Mr. Carlson, how do you win an election? How does one win an election? Now, the average person, even the least informed person, would say you get more votes. So when you look at the vote total, which there is no evidence whatsoever of tampering for, Lula got more votes than Bolsonaro, meaning, and brace yourself, meaning that Lula won. Lula won the election. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there was any sort of fraud. This, again, the same way that in 2021 these folks lied blatantly to their audiences, making stuff up about Georgia and Wisconsin. By the way, the Trump echo chamber, that atmosphere, a lot of those folks are being potentially charged in the state of Georgia. They lied about Arizona. They lied about Pennsylvania. They lied about the specifics of Philadelphia and Maricopa County. They continue to propagate these false narratives, and people buy it with no evidence, or the evidence that is easily and quickly debunked. Because the thing is, I can't necessarily even blame certain people for believing that there are certain things that happen that are a little sketchy. You hang out at the polls enough, you know that there are things that happen that are like, that's kind of weird. But there's almost always, and I will say almost always because I can't say always because there's no certainty, but almost always a logical explanation for something happening. Without full context or without blatantly lying, folks like Tucker Carlson can continue to spread lies without evidence.
So yesterday, in frustration, a group of Brazilian protesters swarmed their legislature. Watch.
For those listening, the video right now is these Brazilian folks, these Bolsonaro supporters, attacking a police officer, sounds familiar, and beating a horse. Beating a police horse. Disgusting.
Eu sou falso. Estão atirando com bala de verdade, hein, cara?
Espaço aqui, ó. Vai abrir
Nós
espaço.
estamos tudo de mão livre.
Vai lá do outro lado, tudo tá ali, né?
Now, you may actually have seen some of that video in the United States over the last couple of days, and you saw it because it has political uses. What's happened in Brazil is being likened to January 6th.
So, the reason why you're seeing it in American politics is because it's important to know beyond the... Oh man, I'm getting a little heated here already. The reason why you may have seen these images and these videos beyond just the likening to January 6th, which it clearly is similar to, because literally they are storming the Capitol building the same exact way that happened on January 6th. The same exact lies were told. The same exact people are propagating it. People like Steve Bannon, as he's going to talk about here in a second, saying, oh, Steve Bannon didn't do anything. Trump didn't do anything. Well, Trump didn't directly do this, but Steve Bannon actually did work with Eric Bolsonaro, who's the son of Jair Bolsonaro, who is the former president, and propagating these lies, sowing the seeds of doubt before the election. So maybe Steve Bannon didn't say, storm the Capitol, 1776 style, French Revolution style. Yeah, maybe he didn't explicitly say that stuff, but these people foment the same rhetoric over and over and over again and get the same exact results. It's no wonder. But the American-centric viewpoint of Tucker Carlson here is also telling. Just because it's happening in Brazil doesn't mean that it's not important. Just because things happen in other countries doesn't mean it's not important. Americans need to, and actually some of us like to, know what's happening around the world, because maybe sometimes global implications of issues apply. Maybe global issues, let's just say like COVID-19, global issues, let's say like inflation, global issues, let's say like the far right fascist movement growing across the globe. All of these things are global movements. As much as people like Tucker Carlson want to blame inflation, crime, the increased political violence on Biden, these things are happening on a global scale. Why? I don't know that I could give you a succinct one answer. I think that could be a debate, honestly. We could go back and forth and have different opinions, and we can honestly maybe develop a further 5-paragraph essay response as to what actually is a cause or the cause of some of these things. But he wants to blame it on American media. Of course, he is the number one watched. To be clear, Tucker Carlson is the number one watched political news show in this country. So for him to say, oh, the media just wants you to watch this because it has political implications. It's like, well, yeah, it does have political implications. There are parallels directly to January 6th, but also the same way that a coup in a coup in Central America should be covered, as we saw in 2019 as the attempted coup happened. I'm drawing a blank in where, but of course that happens. But where we were trying to attempt a coup, and just so we're clear, if, it comes to me later. The one I'm talking about is specifically about lithium and going after, and Elon Musk saying we'll coup whoever we want. Like that is a legit thing. Just if you don't believe me, just look it up. This is I do this all on the fly here, so and by myself. So, but that is important to know because it has global implication. It has supply chain implications. It has just much more broader narratives than just saying, oh, Americans might care about this because it looks like January 6th, which it does. But that's not the end all be all. Not everyone else everywhere in the world is exactly just so American-centric or even Eurocentric. Although it looks like these people definitely took some notes from January 6th.
And of course, populist leaders in this country are being blamed for it. Oh, it was Trump and Steve Bannon who did it. That's not true, but even if it were true, it would be just the tail end of the story. It would be the result of something that happened before. So the obvious question is, why are protesters in Brazil so angry? Well, they're angry because the new Lula government has eliminated their most basic civil liberties. Lula is working.
He says this, and there's actually no evidence for this.
Working to turn Brazil into a Chinese-style dictatorship, and he's doing it very quickly with maximum aggression. Now, our media don't want to talk about that. They refuse to. Why? Well, for reasons that should make you very nervous.
So there you go. That is Tucker Carlson in the end there, talking about Lula da Silva somehow stripping the Brazilian people of their civil rights. Of course, despite what he might have you believe, leftists, as Lula is one, believe in individual civil rights. They believe in individual civil liberties, more so than the far-right Bolsonaro, who has cracked down on gay people in the country, trans people in the country. Of course, that doesn't surprise folks like Tucker Carlson because they support that. They actually support doxing and harming people that are in the LGBTQ plus community. But that's besides the point. The audacity to just claim that he's stripping these people of their rights, etc., is not true. And there's no evidence because you know what? He's not stating anything specific because guess what? There is nothing specific. He is just using this broad narrative of just saying they're stripping people of their civil rights. How so? We don't know. He's making it like China. Why? I don't know. It's by supporting labor and supporting unions and co-ops. Ooh, wow, so scary because guess what? Sorry, Tucker, but China doesn't have competitive markets in the same way that we do. China doesn't have worker co-ops. China doesn't have union labors or labor unions. They don't have any of this stuff because they are an authoritarian communist dictatorship. And that's it. There's a big difference between social democracy, democratic socialism, some mixture hybrid of capitalism and socialism beyond just regular social democracy, and what you're talking about in China. So his lies, of course, continue. That shouldn't be a surprise. But there you go. He continues to lie. I also wanted to quickly plug it while talking about this because we don't usually talk too much about Brazil. But in 2020, before his passing, Michael Brooks, who I was a fan of before, he passed away, did an interview with Lula da Silva, and he lines up a lot of what Lula believes, what he stands for, what he did as president, and what he planned on doing, of course, had he gotten out of jail, and he was released. I believe it was subsequent to Michael's passing. So he never saw Lula free after this time, but he interviewed him at the time. So you can find this online. I will put it in the description as well for you to check out. So if you thought I was heated before, buckle up. Because what we're about to dive into now is the continued dismantling of my alma mater, the continued disgrace of my former schools. The school board here has become, and I'm specifically talking about the Central Bucks School Board in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, has become a laughingstock, has become a political battleground week after week, month after month, and now year after year. More so in the last 3 to 4 years, but the last 2 years have dramatically increased the level of vitriol and hate. In fact, the event that I alluded to in the beginning of this episode tonight is requiring police presence because of the people at this meeting last night. Not the left wing, not the centrists, the right wingers that are threatening people, the right wingers that continue to perpetuate threats under the guise of the assumption that they can get away with it, the assumption that nobody's going to stand up to them, the assumption that they have all of the power in this dynamic. The Central Bucks School Board, as we've discussed a number of times, has been featured in The Daily, which is a daily podcast by the New York Times. It has been covered in local media. It has been covered in Pennsylvania media. It has been covered in national media more broadly. And it's never good. When I went to school in Central Bucks, I was proud. I was proud to be a Central Bucks West Buck when I played football, when I played baseball, when I was in the choir. I was proud when I went to Penn State and I could say I came from, Bucks County. I came from Central Bucks, and people knew it. People knew it for being a good school. It helped me get into school, I'm sure. It helped me get into grad school on some level. I will say that Tabitha Delangelo, who is being vehemently attacked by the other school board members, as well as the other two Democrats on the board, but specifically Tabitha, and the video we will watch is called out. Tabitha single-handedly has helped more people than anybody I know in local office. She has inspired me to go to grad school. She wrote a letter of recommendation that helped me get into an Ivy League school. Just imagine, and I'm not doing this to brag, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college, period. Not Ivy League school, not Stanford. I went to Penn State and I graduated. I'm the first person in my entire family to do so. And at the same time, I was inspired and supported and lifted up and told to go after it, and got into UPenn with the recommendation from Dr. Tabitha Delangelo, who, as we will talk about here in a second, is a teacher of teachers. She is a professor. The meaning that, for me personally, the anger I feel personally as I watch people that never, maybe some of them did, but that never went to these schools, dismantle, degrade the teachers, degrade the institution, degrade the staff, broadly speaking, meaning the support staff, just the janitorial staff, etc., by politicizing. And yes, everything is political, clearly, as we will talk about in this clip. But everything being political does not make it that everything has to be partisan. Everything being political could mean something as simple as political being on the football team. The football coach is picking somebody based on parent politicking. It does not necessarily mean a partisan bias. every decision is a choice, and every choice in policy is political. Because whether we like it or not, it doesn't mean that it's not bipartisan. It does not mean that it's universal. It does not mean that it's extremist. It doesn't mean that it's radical. But every decision and every choice requires that, a choice. And a choice is inherently political. I don't watch the Central Bucks school board meetings anymore because it's disheartening. When I had my Achilles rupture, I would listen and watch while I was just basically plastered to the couch because we had an election for it. We've had teachers removed from a school that I live within walking distance from because he had pride flags in his classroom and he provided resources to support trans youth. He was let go initially and then just moved to another school quietly to keep people quiet. The school has proposed, I should say, school board has proposed book bannings, which has passed, the implementation of which we have not seen the full effect of yet. And now Policy 321, which originally had the intent to get rid of all political iconography, symbols, flags, anything that could be interpreted as political. This includes, of course, religious stuff as well, which, being that it's January, last month could have meant any sort of celebrations for the holidays, because any sort of celebration for the holidays could be deemed religious or could be deemed political if the right person were to bring up the case and argue with the case, because that's all this is a choice based on the superintendent and the people that are implementing and providing the decisions on these suggestions. You want to call them that? You couldn't have a Ukraine flag because despite Bucks County having an extremely high amount of Eastern Europeans, specifically Ukrainians, living here in this county, it would be deemed political because you were taking a political stance, even though I think even the right-wingers, most of them, unless they watch Fox News, Tucker Carlson, don't support Putin, don't support Russia. If I'm giving them at least the benefit of the doubt that they don't give us. These 6 board members, because it is controlled 6-3 by the Republicans, passed a map, a school board redistricting map for their own districts. Again, seemingly taking inspiration from state representatives, state senates, and Congress, where the elected officials choose their constituency rather than the constituency choosing their elected officials. Gerrymandered a map, which we have talked about previously on this show, that put more Democrats into the three Democratic seats that exist right now, thus creating a perpetual 6-3 majority, which was voted 6-3 because there was no public comment, because there was no way to stop it as of right now. More on that probably to come, because there are things that are being taken in action to do that, because that is not how democracy works. This is not how a republic works. This is not how people want to be represented in Central Bucks. And if people like me and people like you have any say, we will continue to voice our opinions. We will continue to vote in progressive people, democratic people, frankly, anybody that believes in insanity and not just in just letting insanity rather than we believe in sanity. They are using insanity to rule with an iron fist and being a petri dish for far-right propagandists across the country trying to pass this stuff in school boards. Now, I know that Penn Ridge School Board and Council Rock School Boards, which are just neighbors, look towards Central Bucks for what to do, and some of them are going to follow in the footsteps of this stuff. Now, I think Policy 321, again, banning these certain symbols and flags and all that, is not the most controversial of the policies that have been passed, because now, based on pushback from the community, the interpretation, again, is still up in the air. There is not a definitive decision on this. The original policy included, and I'm going to see if I can pull up the original here while I'm doing this, but the original included bans on political. I'll just show you. This is an article from the Bucks County Courier-Times, reported by Chris Ullery, who is an actually really good journalist. He does fair reporting, not just one-side bias reporting. He is not explicitly Democratic. He is not explicitly Republican. He has done good interviews with me, etc. And I support his reporting here in the Bucks County Courier-Times. He's doing real, legitimate reporting. The original draft had controversial policy restricting, and this is me reading, displays of, quote, political, socio-political, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious beliefs. So what happens is that existing, because remember, there are no symbols in being heterosexual, right? The symbols exist for the LGBTQ plus community because they've been historically marginalized and oppressed, not just in this country, but the globe all over. The coexist symbol, which suggests that this radical notion that people should coexist based on all different religions or non-religion. People should coexist based on all forms of gender and sexual orientation. We should all just exist, accept each other for what we are. A symbol like that is now banned. A symbol of the Ukrainian flag, even if you are Ukrainian, would be banned, or could be interpreted as political. Now, of course, you can have military flags, because those are exempt. Now, and again, I'll say this. I am a supporter of our military. I'm a supporter of our veterans. Specifically, I'm more of a supporter of our active duty members and our veterans than I am the institutions of the military. But regardless, it goes somewhat without saying that the military is political. But of course, that's an exception. You can put a Marine flag up because, hey, we have to recruit people somewhere, right? Now, maybe that's just a jaded and rough, non-benefit of the doubt position. And yeah, I am angry because people will say, "Oh, you look so angry. You seem angry about this." I am angry. oh, you're triggered lib. Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not a liberal, but I am triggered. Because this is the type of nonsense that is driving people away from moving here. It makes kids that are, I'm going to put it this way, and this is not to otherize or any sort of, demonize anybody watching this or a kid that is in school, but kids that are broadly speaking different than the heteronormative average in the school, they actually are otherized by having stuff like this. Now, to be fair, students are allowed to, have a pin on or do whatever, and that's fine. A student's allowed to do that. But providing a safe space in a school, in a classroom, would not be allowed in Central Bucks. Again, I go back to what we were talking about with Brazil. And the national symbol of the American flag. And again, I am not arguing that we should ban the American flag. I said, I have my American flag right there. I love the American flag. I love America. I love Bucks County, and I love Central Bucks. But I do not like what is going on in the Central Bucks School Board, and you could argue that if you want to interpret this new policy, the American flag is certainly a political symbol. Now, one that most of us, 99.9% of us all agree is a good symbol. It means freedom, prosperity, liberty, all these broad principles. But if a Ukrainian flag is political, or any sort of country's flag is political, but the military, you can have those, and the American flag, you can have that. Which, of course, we should have the American flag. Nothing wrong with that. But I'm not the one proposing the ban. The same way that, I'm not proposing a ban on the fountainhead and the nonsense that is proposed in Ayn Rand's books. I'm not proposing a ban on the biography of Ronald Reagan, like they are trying to ban the diary of now I'm drawing a blank, but Anne Frank, the diary of Anne Frank, which is just absolute lunacy to want to ban a telling of the Holocaust because it's political, which actually has happened in Central Bucks. I am not making that up. That was a proposal in Central Bucks. Now, it wasn't a most recent one, but I'm sure it will come up. This is a video because I could sit here and rant and rave all day, but I want to once again, talk about before this, because this is going to be the nonsense. These are Republican school board members playing the victim, as they perpetually do, trying to say that Tabitha DeLangelo and Maryam Mahmoud and Karen Smith, the three Democrats on the board, are trying to indoctrinate children into all this radical political stuff by just saying that maybe we should have, it's okay to have, because the thing is they're not saying that every classroom should have or needs to have a pride flag or have symbols that say it's okay to be you, it's okay to exist. I'm a supporter of you. I had a teacher, I'll say this, just a quick story real quick. And again, I am, as they'll talk about, I'm sure, I am a straight white male. I'm young, but I am a straight white male. And when I was in school, because I played sports, I had a teacher, a social studies teacher. I'll leave his name out just for his own sake. But it's not a bad story. It's a good story. Where I was having a hard time. I was depressed. I had a lot of different things going on. And I never talked to anybody about this really. But he could tell that something was up. And he asked me, Connor, stay after class. I want to talk to you about something. And I did, and it was about, I don't even remember. It was probably about football or something like that. But he provided me a safe space for me to talk through my feelings, because my old guidance counselor is actually in this video. You'll see too. But I didn't feel like I needed to go to a guidance counselor. I didn't feel like I needed to do any of that stuff. I was just upset, and he provided me a safe space to talk with him and provide answers for me and guide me and just be there as a support, which is all that those symbols are giving to kids. This like I don't understand the vitriol. I don't understand this performative BS, as you'll see in this video. And I'm skipping over Deborah Cannon's performative speech, where she's talking about her having a disability, and like, I understand. But also, if you're trying to ban all these things, and she's talking about disability, technically speaking, any sort of support for displaying support for like people based on the ADA is political. Like, it's something that I support, but it's technically political. Like, this is where, if you want to play these semantic games, if everybody wants to play these semantic games and say, oh, Tabitha said in an article published, in 2019, an academic journal, by the way, that, choices are political, and critical theory is necessary to analyze the world based on viewing the world through different lenses, which is what critical race theory is. It is based on critical theory, which is viewing through the lens of different, viewing the world through different lenses. Critical theory could be based on class, could be based on race, could be based on gender, all this different stuff. But these people want to say that, oh, she wants to implement critical race theory in schools and teach these kids that, which is not even close to the case. This is not something that critical race theory is not being taught to kids. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody rational wants to do that. Nobody within the realm of the actual levers of power want to do that. It is necessary for teachers to learn that type of thing so that they can analyze and learn, okay, I might look a certain way, and my student might look a certain way, and they might be different, and I have to meet them where they are, the same way that you would meet a person with a disability where they are, and help them. In Central Bucks, specifically Central Bucks West, my high school had a robust system for people with disabilities, and that was something that was important to me because I was friends with those kids. I was helpful for those kids, and they helped develop my school and gave me an experience to learn from them and to develop as a human. Being around people that are different is good. Being around people that have different experiences is good. All that's to say that the people that need the support, that have historically been oppressed, that have had not had their voices heard, have been historically voiceless, are being pushed aside and being saying you're too political. But let's take a listen to this. This is one of the school board members. I believe it's Sissio, a Republican, right before the vote, and I'll show you the vote for the Policy 321 to pass.
Do you want to know where I was on Friday night after working all day? Friends, enjoying another one of my kids make.
And so, sorry for this. The video is a little choppy. I have it sped up a little bit, and I'm sure the volume is probably all out of whack, but this is what I got, public access. So the video kind of pauses. So if you're listening and it goes quiet, it's just the video stuttering. But this is Lisa Sissio also, LARPing and trying to act cool and say like, she wasn't upset on Friday, which last Friday was January 6th, where people were gathering to remember the attack on the Capitol. Of course, they don't care about that because that's too political. But, she wants to talk about how she was praying for the Democrats.
Making small improvements in his first season in a new sport. I nursed a child through the night. I spent the morning what many people in our community do, listening to my son sing his little heart out in our children's choir. Then I did something really radical. I prayed. In fact, I prayed for Tabitha and Miriam. I prayed that you would see.
So she just said, and it cuts out. She said she's praying for Tabitha, Karen, and Miriam, which are the Democrats on the board.
I know it's pretty radical, right? I prayed that you would see what you were doing is wrong. I prayed that you would stop defaming and demonizing the good people on this board. I prayed that you would stop using vulnerable and innocent children as pawns. I know it's a long shot, but I hope my prayers are answered. I pray for that regularly. Because painting the good people on this board as some sort of extremists so that you can justify implementation of your radical ideas in our classrooms is wrong.
The radical ideas, again, being that you, as a kid, are accepted here no matter who you love, no matter how you identify, no matter what religion you practice, you are loved, you are welcome, which is such a radical idea. So out there. Oh my God, I'm so scared of people being accepted. Oh my God, the persecution. No.
Us because you think you can get people in our own communities to hate us, to hate our children, and shame us into submission is wrong.
Nobody wants us to hate your kids. Really, I don't even care if people know who you are. I'd rather people not know who you are, and I'd rather be the school board just passes things that are actually useful for kids. Nobody should be attacking kids. Nobody should be going after kids. Nobody should be threatening school board members. And yet, I know firsthand of the threats towards the Democrats, literal threats. I know that they have been, maybe stalking might be and I don't know who does this, right? But I know it happens because there's been videos and pictures that have been published online of the Democratic school board members' children. But yeah, this is, you go ahead and get up on your high horse and still continue telling us about how radical acceptance is.
What you didn't count on, though, is that the people in our communities are smarter, kinder, and more moral than you give them credit for. What you seem to forget is that most people...
By the way, what she's not telling anybody is that the districts right now are gerrymandered. So the people in Bucks County, more broadly, which, by the way, is a fact, but Central Bucks especially, there are more Democrats than Republicans. There are more people that are accepting of LGBTQ plus people because in Central Bucks, social liberalism is the norm. And I mean social liberalism broadly. I mean just accepting people for who they are. But because they control the board 6-3, they feel like they can rule with an iron fist.
People in our community don't spend their weekends at fake press conferences and protests. They spend their weekends like me, like the other good people on this board. Maybe your adoring press has...
So this is cutting out, but she's looking at Tabitha saying, your adoring press. The adoring press that wants to, I don't know what, just because apparently the press loves the Democrats on the school board. I don't know where she's getting that, but good for you. Keep going.
You call them to. When I ran for this seat, I spoke openly about why I felt compelled to do so, to protect innocent children. Today,
of course, she's saying innocent children, only the ones that are not gay, trans, queer, bisexual, lesbians, people of different colors, people of different religions, people that are non-religious, people that don't necessarily believe in the same things as them. But yeah, you just want to protect kids, because here's the real thing is that they ran on was protecting kids, broadly speaking. I'm putting that in quotes, by saying that they should be in school without masks, not having vaccines, not caring about the safety of students, not caring about the safety of teachers, not really advocating for any sort of flexibility. They just wanted kids in schools, and that's it.
Dr. Delangelo, you are an educator of educators. I should actually be thanking you for your recent public comments and antics, especially the ones that you shed some light on tonight, Mrs. Cannon. Thank you. Your words speak for themselves. You are the reason this district needs policy 321. I call the question.
Second.
321 by Ms. Sisio,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Pepper. All those in favor? Well, actually, should we do a roll call?
Please.
Here's the vote on the policy.
Mrs. Cannon?
Yes.
Ms. Colby?
Yes.
Dr. Delangelo?
No.
Dr. Mahmood?
No.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mrs. Sisio?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Mrs. Glassbaum?
Yes.
President Hunter?
Yes. Motion passes.
There you go. That is 6 Republicans, 3 Democrats voting straight party line yet again on a policy that is horrible. Now, this is the website that I will suggest you go to if you care about this stuff. advocatesforinclusiveeducation.org. This is the organization that is having the event tonight. It is nonpartisan. Believe it or not, you can talk about politics without being partisan. You can talk about what's happening in the school board without being partisan. They outline how the policy is fundamentally based on banning, removal, and exclusion of political symbols, basically. They say, and I'm just going to read these headlines for everybody, if it passes, which it did, it will likely restrict factual and open discussions about current events, American history, race, gender, sexual orientation, and more, stifle classroom culture and learning, fail to prepare students for the real world, perpetuate a hostile and fearful learning environment for many, incite harassment and witch hunts against teachers. Now, I'll loop back to the article by Chris Ullery, where he has an example of something that is, and I'm going to try to find it. Okay. In an example discussed in a September school board meeting was whether a, quote, Save the Whales poster could be up in a Spanish teacher's classroom, because they don't discuss explicitly in the curriculum environmentalism or protecting animals, ecology, biology, any sort of thing like that. And there's not a clear answer. There's no clear answer, because this is a certain thing that is environmentalism partisan, is environmentalism political. Maybe. I'll close with this by saying these people, meaning the 6 Republicans, are costing the taxpayers that they claim to want to be responsible to, which is BS. They're costing the taxpayers $15,000 per month. Not $15, not $150, not $1,500, $15,000 per month in legal fees, paying for consultants. That does not include the legal fees that I'm sure are coming for the lawsuits from the ACLU based on different policies that have been passed, including the book ban. So, yes, I am pissed off, but the way that you can take action is that this year there are multiple school board seats up in the Central Bucks School District, 2 of which I have jurisdiction over as the chair of the Doylestown Democrats. So stay tuned on how to get Democrats elected to those positions, that they will not be falling in line with this nonsense, and taking a stand for justice, equality, and liberty of students, teachers, staff, and everyone in between, and not wasting taxpayers' money. How about that? And then the last thing we have to talk about today, and I'm going to do this very quickly, is just talk about briefly what happened in on last Friday's vote for the Speaker of the House. So after 14 votes, on the 15th vote, Kevin McCarthy became the Speaker of the House by having a few people vote present, by having a few people literally leave, by having concessions that have not been released to the public given to the holdouts, the 20 or so holdouts that had been causing the issues as we talked about last week. Now, Kevin McCarthy pressured enough people to get the votes to get him over the hump, which I believe ended up with 216 because of enough people leaving. So for every vote total from 218 down, he would need 2 people to leave or to vote present. When you vote present, that would remove you from the vote total. And he got over the hump. Now, it took an extraordinarily long period of time, and it took giving up basically all power that the Speaker has, allowing for one person at any time to be fair, one person at any time in the Republican caucus to call for the removal of the Speaker of the House and have a new vote on that position. Previously, I believe under Pelosi, it was about 50. I think way back it was 5. And then the new proposal from McCarthy in conjunction during this, back and forth was to go back to 5, but they got it down to 1. Now, you can look at it in a number of different ways, and I'm not really too into talking about the potential brawl that happened, because it wasn't really a brawl or anything like that. But there was a physical altercation with one of the representatives and two of the representatives, but specifically holding one back because Matt Gaetz wanted to be chair of a subcommittee, and it would have basically booted out the other guy. So I think that's part of the concession. I think people talked with him and got him to flip, and in the end, everybody kind of got in line. The Republicans continued to do so, as they usually do. And I wanted to talk about specifically the rules package, because the rules package includes that all the concessions to these hardliners, these extremists, because that is what they are. There's no ideological difference between them and Brian Fitzpatrick. They're just more extreme in how they implement things. But Brian Fitzpatrick, the Republican from Bucks County, voted for the rules package the same way as every other Republican, passing it strictly on party lines. So I am not interested in hearing about moderate this, moderate that, because Brian Fitzpatrick did not come up with some coalition that busted up this group of 20. He did not masterfully create this deal, because remember, the Problem Solvers Caucus did nothing to solve the problem that was caused by the Speaker not being elected. It was all BS. And I know that was very quick on that, but there's not all that much to say. I just wanted to put a little check mark on we followed up on this, because last week it was an open question, and for those that I don't know, only follow this show, that was at least something to just put a little period on it. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button down below and hit the thumbs up. If you see a clip come out when you're subscribed, just do us a favor, check it out. Even if you've already watched the live show, that would be awesome. You can hit the thumbs up, because sometimes we get bombarded with negative downvotes by the far right on here. Of course, our Instagram and TikTok and Twitter feeds are all mostly supportive, but on here on YouTube, the algorithm kind of leans right on some of these things, so it gets lost. But engagement's engagement, so we'll take it. But hit that thumbs up while you're down there. If you would like to listen to the show, you can listen to almost any podcast version of the show on any app. Just look up Greater Society Media, Greater Society Podcast. You could probably look up my name, Connor O'Hanlon, and probably find it. You can support the show on patreon.com/Greater Society Media for as little as $5 a month. I am looking at potentially dropping that down. So stay tuned for that. If it's something that you could do, that would be great, as we do pay for help for editing, graphics, etc. And going into this new year, we just want to continue growing. We are close to 100 subscribers, by the way. So please help us get to over to 100, and we can at least have some respectable number of subscribers. We'll continue growing. But you can follow the show, like I said, on Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook, Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. All that being said, we will return live next week. So until then, stay safe and get ready for even more political action this year because, like I said, school board's up this year. So until then, stay safe. Peace.